Welcome everybody to social and emotional learning for the digital age. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. There we go. Brent, can you just give me a thumbs up? Are we good? All right. Excellent. So I'm just going to move you all out of my way. All right. So today's webinar is on social and emotional learning for the digital age. Really hot topic right now. Making those connections and in this time between COVID and 1 minute we're virtual, 1 minute we're face to face, 1 minute we're hybrid, or whatever the situation may be. So today, a little fast. Today, I'm going to give you a very brief introduction to BSD education and let you know a little bit more about us. Then we'll dive into what is CASEL. You may or may not have heard of this before, so we're going to dive into that. Then I'm going to give you some practical social emotional learning practices that you can actually walk away and initiate into your classroom today or tomorrow. And then we're going to talk about the power of play. I'm just going to leave it at that because a lot of people get nervous when they hear the word play. So I'm going to come back to that. And then I'm going to show you some sample projects that BSD offers that really integrate well with social and emotional learning. And then we'll open it up to some Q&A. By all means, if at any time you do have a question or if I'm going too fast or if you want me to repeat something, you can either just unmute and let me know, or you can throw it in the chat because Brent will be watching that as well. All right, so like Brent said, I am brand new to BSD education. I am their technology coach and trainer for North America. I've worn many hats as a teacher, from a teaching assistant to teaching AIS math. I also taught at the high school level, business education, and I have also been a digital literacy teacher that was most recently for about 7 years. So I've been in all different areas within education. The only grade levels that I have not taught, and I applaud those that do, is pre-K, 6th, 7th, and 8th. So if you teach middle school or pre-K, my hat is off to you. All right, so quick little introduction to what BSD is all about. BSD provides curriculum, they provide a platform, and the training and support that goes along with it. And we feel that that makes the real impact. My first instinct, or what I always come across when it comes to working with other software companies, is that they provide a great curriculum and they provide a great platform, but then they don't really give us that training or that support that you need. So that's my role, to make sure that you get the professional development and that coaching experience. All right, so BSD really empowers, or we try to really empower educators to teach digital skills. So we are a coding and programming platform, but that's not all we do. We also integrate those digital skills. To be honest with you, though, a lot of our projects, or several of our projects, directly relate to digital literacy skills that we are already teaching in the classroom, but now we just kind of put a little spin on it with the coding and the programming. We also offer those soft skills, dire need of communication and collaboration and critical thinking. And BSD really, their core value is CARE, which stands for curiosity, adaptability, resilience, and empathy. And for me, that last one, E, empathy, is definitely very important, especially with our social and emotional learning discussion today. All right, so let's move on to what is CASEL. One of the most important aspects of online learning, I want you to just take just a couple of seconds to think about what you thought was the most important aspect of online learning. And a lot of people instantly come out with, well, we need a great platform, we need a learning management system, or we need Zoom, we need Google Meet, we need this extension or that extension. And be honest with you, it came down to a lot more than just that. MIT did a survey, and they surveyed any school that went from full person to remote. And they surveyed teachers, students, community members, parents, administrators, and it all came down to relationships. Relationships were the most critical aspect of online teaching. Now, obviously, probably the most easiest was the teacher-student communication or relationship, because we had those connections like Zoom and Google Meet. But then everything else kind of fell short. That student to student communication or collaboration, that teacher to teacher, the admin to teacher, we really struggled to keep that in the forefront during our online learning. So with all of this said, we need some kind of framework, some kind of guidance, some way of helping us through this. And that's where CASEL comes into. So CASEL stands for Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. And their framework really supports the idea of improving SEL in the classroom and beyond. So here's this great visual that they have created. So inside, they call it the big five. These are the 5 skills that are needed not only for the classroom, like I said, but beyond. So we're going to dive a little bit deeper in the next slide into each of these. But if we maximize these skills in the classroom, that's going to trigger into the school, which then will trickle down or have that funnel effect down to our families and then down into the communities. And that's what these rings represent. So if we start at the classroom level and then expand out, then our framework, or this CASEL framework, is due to be successful. So let's break down each of those little skills, okay? So the first thing that we want to talk about is self-awareness. That's the recognizing your strengths, knowing your limitations, being able to accept the fact that you have, and I hate to say the word weakness, okay? That self-management. Can you manage your life? How do you manage stress? Are you self-disciplined? Do you have that internal motivation? The third skill is social awareness, having that compassion and that empathy. The most important thing, I think, identifying with the diverse social norms. I love to give this example because it cracks me up. I had a student in class who belched during snack time, and a student next to him barked to me, "That's not polite. You shouldn't be doing that." And his response was, "Well, I do it all the time at home." So being able to identify when it's okay to do something and when it's not okay to do something. I just love that story. I think it's cute. The next one is relationship skills, and talking about that communication and the collaboration and actively listening. You know, I love when a student says to me, "Yes, I'm listening to you," but their head is down and they're twirling their hair or whatever. So teaching that active listening. And then the last one is being responsible decision maker, being curious and open-minded. Doing that critical thinking, but making sure that you're making a sound judgment. Did you do enough research before making that decision? So, like I said, all these skills, if are performed in the classroom, can actually benefit each of those rings. All right, so where does this all begin? How do we get started? So CASEL believes that when we take a whole school level approach, that you're going to be more effective. So the first thing that you actually want to do is step here, that build foundational support. So here's where you gather your group of teachers that have buy-in to the CASEL theory or the CASEL framework, and you start that committee and start building on ideas. And then you create a plan. And that plan is going to it's going to take a process. It's not something that it's a one and done. Tomorrow we're going to talk about SEL and then we're going to check that off the box and be all done. Or, tomorrow we're going to talk about SEL and everything's going to be fixed. It's a process and you have to have a plan. And one thing that's really important is that you take a mirror to yourself. Make sure you look at your own social and emotional learning and what strengths do you have. How could you promote SEL? Or maybe you want to look at, I have this weakness, this one target area that I need to work on. So as an adult, we need to strengthen our own social and emotional learning so that way we can better promote and be there to support the students. And I think that just kind of makes perfect sense that that we need to be okay with ourselves before we can help students. I actually do have, I'm going to ask Brent to just throw out a link for me. This is a link to CASEL. It's kind of like the playbook. It really goes into a lot of information, a lot of depth. So if you're really interested in taking this to your into your school or into your classroom, this would be a great link for you to dive a little bit deeper into. All right. Any questions so far, Brent?
No questions so far, but you should see the link in the chat. So let me know if you have any questions about that, though. Thank you.
Great. All right. So we need some examples. So I said that this is a process, but there are little steps that you can take along the way that you could actually start today or tomorrow and get started right away with SEL. So here is one approach. Let's say, for example, you are in a Google Meet or a Zoom Meet, and there's about 5 minutes or so before your actual meeting. And this a lot of times teachers will have the students waiting until the exact minute, or they'll open up the room to let them chat with other students. But what I'd like to do is just kind of throw something like this up, maybe a how are you? So I've given you 2 different examples. There's a ton of them out there. If you just do a Google search, you can find, or you can just make your own. So I've used emojis and the scale of cat to try to add a little humor. So for example, 5 minutes before your meet, you would post this on a scale of cat. How are you feeling today? And your students would respond in the chat. I'm feeling a cat 4 today. I'm chilling. I'm really cool. I'm ready to get going. Or maybe they're feeling a cat scale of 8, like, oh, I didn't sleep last night. I didn't eat breakfast this morning. Okay, so this kind of gives me a little flag. So if I have that same student that's giving me that scale of 8 every day, then that's a red flag that something might be going on. There might be something else that I need to be in tune with. Or maybe 5 minutes before the class, everyone in the whole class says that they're a cat scale of 8. So I've got to find out what happened prior to them coming to me and how I can help. So it's just a great way to check in with the students. So again, like if I had that cat level 8, I might want to check in with that student maybe at the end of our meeting. Hey, I noticed that you said you were feeling like an 8. Is there anything that you want to talk about? Is there anything I can help you with? So it just opens that line of communications and it creates that relationship. This is a great opportunity too. You could even do this during morning meeting when they first walk in and you have maybe carpet time. So this is an easy way you can just integrate this into the day. One that I like to use, and I know became very popular once we came back to face-to-face learning, was just that greetings in the morning. So, you're standing at the door, and when the student walks in, the student just chooses what kind of activity to do with you. I created ones in the past using my Bitmoji. So this would also show me kind of a red flag, like if the student was coming in every day saying that they needed a hug. I might have to reach out and make sure that everything is okay with that student. So again, just another way for you to create those relationships. All right, so a little bit more about personal connections. It's really easy. I know that we have curriculum that we have to get through, the testing that we have to get through and whatnot. But if we take 5 minutes, doesn't take any lesson planning, just 5 minutes at the start of a class or at the end of class, and just talk with the students. People say to me like, oh, well, show and tell, that's more for, K-5, maybe. But not really. You'd be really surprised. Any age student is more than willing to do a show and tell. I would probably call it something different for an older student, but it's just a time for you to share stories and, what did you do on the weekend? Or, hey, how was the football game? Or I heard your band was playing over the weekend, whatever the case may be. And be authentic and real with the students. Give them examples. And I always make sure that the students see that I have weaknesses too. I'm human, I'm not perfect. So usually the very first thing I say to them, I'm not a good speller. And that's saying it lightly. I am a terrible speller. I rely heavily on dictionaries and spell check. So admitting that to them, they end up checking everything that I do and they try to catch my weakness. And it just creates a conversation for us. And then it opens up to them releasing what their weaknesses are. All right, so here are the questions that I want you to ask yourself. Where am I with my own connection to SEL? Okay. Where do I fall? Do I have experience already in CASEL that maybe I could start promoting or getting other teachers involved? Or maybe I don't really know a lot about it, so I need to click on one of those links that Brent's sharing and dive in a little bit deeper. Where can I start? So obviously you need to know where you are, okay? And then where do I start? Like I said, going to those resources that are provided, and creating that committee, getting that committee of teachers together to start supporting CASEL. And where do I need help? This goes back to that weakness. Look at that chart again. I'm just going to flip really back. Looking at this, where are your weaknesses? Where do you need to focus on? Maybe you need to be more organized in your life, and maybe that's your weakness. Or maybe you look at that in the reverse way and look at, I'm really good at relationship skills, and that's the area that you kind of promote and focus. So go back to our questions. So make sure that you ask yourself these questions and reflect and use that information to help your students. All right, the power of play. Everybody gets nervous when I use the word play. I remember going to my principal and saying that we want to play Minecraft EDU, and I thought he was going to fall right out of his chair. That I was asking to actually play in the classroom. And a lot of people ask, like, how does that fit in? Like, we're not supposed to play in school. But play is a great way to learn and expand on SEL. So let's take a peek here. What's going on? What do you see? What is the child doing? Not doing? And if you could leverage this, what could you do? So we all have this student, or you've seen this student, or maybe you were the student that had to bring a toy to school or is constantly making paper airplanes. And, yes, we're schooling them because, we want them to do the task at hand, but they're playing because they're curious and they're wondering and they're using their imagination. And this is natural. It's a natural way to feel. So if we give a kid a box, they'll explore the world. Okay. So we want to leverage this play and turn it into a whole new experience for the student. So really quick, a study was done back in 2002 that actually found that preschools in the US was associated with better short and long-term academic, motivational, and well-being outcomes by the end of primary school. And then again in 2006, they found more evidence that interrelationships between the complexity of play and children's emotional well-being. So we know this from kids. I mean, when we're out playing, when we were little, yes, I know it seems like a different world now, but when we pretend and we play, we get imaginative and we get curious and we really start thinking outside of the box. So who better than Lego to talk about play? All right, so Lego has a foundation, and what they have done is a lot of research, not just on playing Legos, but just the characteristics of play and what does play really mean for us. And these areas that they've focused on, play has to be meaningful. It has to be joyful, socially interactive, actively engaging, and iterative. And I think this is pretty obvious. I mean, when we see children playing, they're playing because they want to, because they're having fun and they're engaged in it, and they're problem solving. So these characteristics of play that Lego has created or established say that these play also builds on skills. And the skills that they build on, obviously play has to be physical and it has to be social. There's got to be some cognitive and emotional, and there's got to be some creativity in it. Okay. So when we are talking about play builds on all of these skills. So how do we design a lesson that's going to reflect all of these elements, or at least some of these elements, into play and social emotional learning and learning? So we at BSD make sure that there's ways for students to play. And we really live by Seymour Papert. He's the Lego professor of learning research, works with Lego Foundation. And he said, rather than pushing children to think like adults, we might do better to remember that they are great learners and try harder to be more like them. I love this quote because I always try to step into my students' shoes, kind of let loose, be playful, be a little bit more like them, kind of get at their level. And I've noticed a huge difference with my relationships. I may not always understand what they're explaining to me, especially if it's like a video game that I've never played or something like that. But just actively listening to them and engaging with them really goes a long way. All right, so Lego Foundation actually has, like, if you are really interested and you want to dive even deeper into these play skills and learn more information about how to leverage play in your classroom, I'm going to have Brent throw up a link to a class that Lego offers. It is free. It lasts about 9 weeks. They're expecting you to participate about 2 hours of your time a week. It's 100% online. It's work at your own pace. And it's just meant to help you bring play into the classroom. So if you do have, I know that's a lot of time, but if it's something that you're really interested in, I really encourage you to take a look at that. All right, so how do we weave play and social emotional learning into a project? So I'm going to give you an example. This is a project that BSD offers. It's It's called a multi-page website. And all of BSD's projects are all real world hands-on experience. So in this one, the students had to create a community outreach. They had to create a website for a community situation. So in this example, it's Kind Hearts and Animal Sanctuary, but it could be anything. It could be for an animal shelter. It could be for a homeless shelter, food shelter, or a food bank rather. But the whole point of this project is for them to actively play, okay, actively be engaged, socially interact, because now they have to communicate with that community member that they're creating the website for. And they're going to have that passion, that meaningful desire to do the project because it's something that they believe in. And those skills, they get to be creative, they get to social, they have that emotional touch to their topic. So it's a great way. It combines coding and digital skills. It combines that SEL that we're looking for all into one package. All right. Any questions?
No questions yet.
All right. Well, what we would like to offer you today is actually, went too fast, is a free trial. So your free trial is actually going to include 8 total projects. It's a project called, a course rather, called Code is Your Voice. And it includes 8 projects. The students are going to learn about HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. It's all, every project has video lessons to go with it. There's live coding, there's quizzes that go along, and in resources such as the code glossary. It is self-paced. The students can work at their speed, and it'll give you an opportunity to dabble a little bit as well and take a look at some of the projects. Just to give you a little sneak peek, these are some of the projects that will be available to you. The people who inspire me, I really enjoyed doing this project. It was great to be able to just look at what other people were saying and their inspiration. My favorite websites, I totally loved this. This was just like that typical project that we always do in the beginning, just to get to know the students. So this was kind of like, what is their favorite food? What is their favorite animal? Their favorite game? So it was a great way to get to know the students a little bit. The trivia maker game, the students love making that one for sure. And that's a great way to integrate into your classroom as well. They could even, instead of making it a trivia base, maybe they make it more like a vocabulary review or a review in math class. And then the last one is Support My Cause, where they actually get to design a campaign. So how exciting is that? And then they have the 3 at the bottom: Jokes and Riddles, Animated Text, and the Robot Builder as additional projects as well. Those are quite fun as well. I liked the animated text one because it's just so you get to be fun and creative. The kids love that. All right. So I would love to get your feedback, not only about today's session, but about BSD in general. If there's any feedback that you'd like to provide there, I love to hear anything that you have to say, suggestions or comments, or maybe even like what you're doing in SEL right now. I'd love to hear more about that as well. So that's actually the end of my presentation. I'm going to actually just stop sharing for a second so I can join you back. All right.
That was great, Allison. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, so if anybody has any questions, feel free to chime in, or you can submit them through the chat, either whatever way you feel more comfortable with.
Or even if you have any comments too, if there's anything, like, hey, we're implementing CASEL, or I'm going to bring this home to my school and see what they think. I'd even like to hear some feedback from that. And please, if you get a chance, make sure that, either before you leave or later on today, that you do provide me with that feedback. It's just really helpful.
All right, it doesn't look like we have any questions coming in. Is there a common question that you get about, oh, we got one. We got a question. Sorry about that. Can you give me some ideas of how to incorporate play with seniors, grade 9 and upwards, in looks like a English classroom?
In an English classroom. Okay, so you're at that high school level now. BSD does offer curriculum that fits the bill for a high school level. So I would definitely suggest you dabble a little bit and look into that curriculum. That would definitely be helpful. That just kind of covers your SEL and your play all in one. And the curriculum is already written for you. So that always makes life a lot easier. I know how difficult that can be. But my suggestion to you as well would be to dive into that playbook that Brent shared with us in the chat, that link. And if you dive into that playbook, there's so much information, lots of suggestions, additional information, things that other schools have tried. I think that would be very helpful to you as well. So I would check out BSD and then check out that playbook. I hope that helps.
Yeah, we actually had another question come in about how do you incorporate play into high school classes. So I think that'll be beneficial for multiple people. Thank you, Allison.
Definitely. And even so, like I said, that high school level, like a lot of the teachers get nervous when they show and tell, like they're gonna, cringe when they hear that. You give it a new name, give it a little spin, but really making that connection, especially I think even more so sometimes at the high school level, middle school level, they're very lost. They're trying to find themselves or whatnot. So opening that level of communication is very good.
Good. We do have a few more minutes. So if you have any other questions, please submit them in the chat or feel free to chime in. Yeah. Are there any common questions that you receive about SEL, Allison?
Actually, there's one thing that I did want to mention. I don't know, my school was using PBIS, and a lot of people think, oh, well, you either use PBIS or you use CASEL, and actually they integrate with one another. So if you already have a type of program like a PBIS that's similar to that, the CASEL framework fits in nicely with it. So don't think like, oh, well, we already have a program, or, we're already utilizing this. CASEL actually just integrates very nicely. So you could have two components.
Well, good. I'm not seeing any other questions, so I think it's always nice to get a few minutes back, but I appreciate everybody who has joined us today. So thank you. You will see a follow-up email from BSD probably tomorrow with a link to the recording, and feel free to share that with some of your colleagues. But if you have any questions about the trial or anything regarding this presentation, future presentations, please reach out. We are here to answer any questions and help you in any way we can. So Allison, you did a great job today. Thank you. I really do appreciate it. And thank you to everybody who has joined us. We hope you are with us for the remaining webinars that we have coming up. Otherwise, we'll hope to see you again soon.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.